this past Thursday, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness finally dropped. And Dave, Sam Raimi behind the camera for this one, directing this. A lot of hype for this. This had been pushed back. Was supposed to be coming out before Spider-Man into the Spider-Man No Way Home. So we're kind of getting this not in the order that they first expected. Did this movie, did Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness really take you into the Multiverse of Madness? Do you feel like it went as crazy as you
Huh,
expected?
that's a great question. I would say it's not as multiversal as you're led to believe. We're really only in a few different universes in this. And we see all these flashes of all these other things very briefly, but we're not really in anything too crazy. But I did enjoy my time with this film. Very messy film, a lot going on, but I think it's pretty fun if you just kind of roll with it and try not to overanalyze its muddled plot.
Yeah, I thought that this was a lot of fun. I think that there's some really, really, really cool and inventive moments, and some times when you're just like, man, Sam Raimi and the way that he thinks of things and how inventive and creative he is just like singular. And then there were times when I was like, he can't totally escape the MCU though. There's still
Right.
times when he's got to kind of play the game. So I think there's a lot to like in it and a lot to not like. Why don't we start with the things that we thought really, really worked in
Right.
this? What did you like about the
Well,
film?
I think that's a good place to start. Is Sam Raimi, of course, his return to superhero films after, for all intents and purposes, establishing where we are today with this Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy. But Raimi at least does as well a job as Kevin Feige and friends will let you do with putting your own stamp on a Marvel movie, and he picks his spots well. Obviously, he really does no say on most of the plot and conclusions and stuff, but Raimi brings a lot of his talents, apart from Spider Man, obviously, as a horror film director. And he really, I think, brings a lot of that in a pretty compelling way per MCU standards. You know, whether it's like the a twist on like the Hall of Mirrors or overtly like demonic stuff towards the end. Like I I I quite enjoyed him at least trying his best to sprinkle in some less familiar elements to the MCU. He's not the first one to put a stamp on a movie. I think Coogler and Black Panther comes to mind, of course, and Watiti and Thor Ragnarok as well, and I guess James Gunn. But apart from them, it's been a little while since we've had someone really kind of stand out as a director on this. Chloe Zhao tried with Eternals, natural lighting and all, but didn't really work out in the end. But I think Raimi, he certainly brought his skills to this film.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think when you think about Sam Raimi, a few of the things that really come to mind are the the essence of horror, but also his take on action and like making action still like fun and lighthearted, and it doesn't have to be totally like totally serious all the time. And I think you get a lot of that in both of these. Not only like you talked about like the demonic aspects of the ending, but there are times when this movie is just straight up scary. Like that scene where Wanda is chasing them through that tunnel, and then they're like kind of like trapped where like underneath the bridge or wherever the water is, and you're just like, where is Wanda? Like that moment is like truly scary. I think the way that he portrays like the fight scene between Doctor Strange and evil Doctor Strange is really, really inventive. And that take to that point I was talking about where, conceptualizing lighthearted, like fighting and violence, using the score and the music that's being played as a way of like conceptualizing the fight, I just thought was like absolutely brilliant and so
Mm,
cool. And I literally just like had a huge smile watching it. I was like, this is something I'd never seen or never even thought of in a movie. And this is why this guy is so
yeah,
great.
right. And it kind of reminds me of what I liked a lot about Scott Derrickson's Doctor Strange, the first film, which
Mhm.
introduced us to the character straight up. And I think some people kind of view that as a bit archetypal origin story per MCU standards, very similar to how Iron Man functions, and the early Stephen Strange characterization pretty similar to Tony Stark. But visually, the first Doctor Strange is very fun and cool. And I think that, and also a horror filmmaker that probably factors into this, but they know that they can at least attempt to dress up something cool and interesting with Doctor Strange, given what that character's powers are in the universe. So they do it, and Raimi just super capable at this. And like you said, the music fight I thought was spectacular. Just one of the most interesting pieces of combat there's been in the entire MCU. To
Oh
be
yeah.
honest, usually the CGI fighting in Act Three, not people's favorite moments
Mhm.
in Marvel properties. This is a rare exception.
And even thinking about that beforehand, and a bit more of a terrifying take on the action is when Wanda is facing the Illuminati, which we'll talk a little bit more about the Illuminati in a little bit and what that might mean for the MCU. But just the way that she goes about defeating them and actually killing them, I thought was at least inventive, although definitely more violent and a little bit more harrowing. Seeing Reed Richards just get turned into noodles is a tough look in a lot of ways. I forgot who the guy who can kill someone with just his voice is, but
Black
um,
Bolt, the
yeah,
Inhumans guy.
the way Black Bolt dies is really rough. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of like inventiveness in terms of the action, how these
Mm.
these heroes are utilizing their powers. Um, yeah, and I think to kind of keep on the Raimi aspect, I also think the way that this movie looks, while there's sometimes when it feels, I think, a bit MCU-ish, I think you can definitely feel his camera work and his touch throughout. There's a lot of
Mm.
like close-ups and a lot of like ways that the camera moves about through the action that feels very in line with him, kind of putting it like right in the person's face, like shaking it, feeling like you're in the scene a lot of the times, which I
Mm.
think really stood out to me as well. What else did you like about the movie? What else worked for you?
Yeah. So I think a creative decision for the MCU that was smart was to lean into Wanda Maximoff as a villain, because WandaVision, the series, the first Disney Plus MCU series, did not redeem Wanda at the end of after everything that happens at Westview. And I think that was a bit of a criticism for a lot of people, including myself. It's like, hey, like Wanda was like bad news in this series and like shouldn't be like forgiven for her personal self good intentions, right? And the movie also leans into that. I thought that was great idea to make her the villain. And honestly, this WandaVision Doctor Strange 2 arc for the character is the best material that this character has had after not being much of a presence at all in all the other Avengers movies. So I thought it was really compelling that the Scarlet Witch was the true villain of the story, and they do a really good job of having the magic and sorcery stuff feel pretty compelling.
Uh, I do think it was a good choice to have her as the villain. I don't know if the portrayal of her, what was driving her decisions, is necessarily one that I thought was well thought out.
It's very fraught still ever since the show.
Yeah, and to be completely honest, like I think it's a not a great look for the MCU to basically be taking motherhood and using that as a way to like drive a villain into doing some of the worst things that we've seen on screen from someone who was once a hero in these films. I mean, Wanda is trying to kill a teenager throughout the course of this movie. She is trying to she kills a lot of people in this movie. And WandaVision, for as uh much as she was a villain in that, no one actually ends up really dying. People were, mind controlled for a month, just mind controlled for a month before, but like they don't actually die. She's actually murking dudes in this, and I don't know if if I think they should have thought out a little bit more, like what was driving her and what her motivation was, and maybe rethought like being like, oh, she just wants to be with her kids again. That's driving her like crazy or driving her to do this. I think it is a bit regressive. But I do think it was smart because when you when you think about it, eh, if they had made it like, oh, there's this demon out there and Strange and Wanda have to team up, I mean, it just becomes a general MCU versus some, CGI villain that you can't connect with. So I think this definitely made the movie a little bit more grounded for me, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I also enjoyed like the presence as like other Doctor Stranges as like
Yeah.
your antagonist at the end there. The music fight we talked about, but like evil Doctor Strange, which is technically referenced in Marvel What If. You don't need to have watched What If, honestly, to have watched this
No.
movie. But again, like we're not throwing anyone else in here. It's all kind of self-contained uh, between Wanda and Strange, and again, smart. I guess the biggest newcomer of consequence to this story is certainly the America Chavez character,
Yeah.
and completely introduced for the series. And she, in a sense, is almost a MacGuffin presence, right? We have the the two books, right? The Darkhold and the Book of Vishanti, the good and bad book, basically. But then we also have America Gomez and her powers to teleport between dimensions, although out of her control. You know, I thought the performance from Xochitl Gomez was pretty solid, pretty good, and I wouldn't mind seeing her pop up in like one of these Young Avengers properties we're surely gonna get soon.
Yeah.
But I think for the sake of Doctor Strange 2, America Gomez is she's kind of like on the short end of the stick. Like the stuff with her parents is it's very basic and quick, and I feel like the beats of the Gomez character are like pretty straightforward.
Yeah, just want to clarify. It's America Chavez, and the actress's name is Zatil uh, Gomez.
Yep.
I have a hard time pronouncing that. You were just saying America Gomez, but no
Oh,
big
sorry.
deal.
Yep.
Yeah, easy to get those confused. But yeah, I agree. I don't know if America really did much, and it's actually interesting to think about when these movies are supposed to come out in terms of No Way Home too, because right, I see Strange's the way that he's approaching Peter in No Way Home and the way he's approaching kind of mentoring America very similarly. And if this movie had come out first, I think it would have actually confused a little bit the way Strange acted towards Peter in No
Mhm.
Way Home because he's a bit cold and just kind of like, "What are you doing? Like this is ridiculous. Like figure it out." Whereas with America, he's a little bit more like, trying to be nurturing and understanding. Now he doesn't he doesn't at this point know who Peter Parker is based on the spell he casts. So I don't know if it would have made sense. I don't know if his character development makes sense either way. But I do think it's just interesting to think about. But yeah, America, we'll see her again. I just don't know if I was super fascinated by her storyline.
Mhm.
Um, I think one of the major presences in this Strange versus the older Strange is Rachel McAdams, and I was
Yeah.
wondering how you felt about her presence in this. Do you feel like she was worth kind of building back into this?
Yeah, yeah, as Christine Palmer. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's one of those things where like the Christine Palmer character in Doctor Strange 1, pretty straightforward, you know what to expect kind of thing. I guess the like out of body surgery experience, probably the best her best moments in the first film. I like that I at least for the continuity's sake kind of brought her in and gave it the best grace note they could. They also don't really spend too much time with her for all intents and purposes, which I think is good because like the character ultimately was not like super established. I mean, I don't think Christine Palmer's gonna have a big comeback the way Jane Foster is
mm,
having the comeback in Thor 4, for
yeah,
example. So it's I think it was fine. I mean, I like Rachel McAdams. She's a great actress. So it's not much of a part, but
no,
I guess once we go to the other universe and we see a different version of Christine, I thought that was kind of a smart way to give McAdams at least a little bit more to do.
Yeah, I was happy to see her. I just was kind of like, I could have taken this or left it. I mean, this is really like a strange character development device.
Right.
His presence with Mick Adams and America totally is. And I think it was nice to like be be like forcing him to confront not only that relationship, which could have been the only one that they forced him to confront, but also facing his relationship with everybody else in terms of how people see him and kind of going through these different uh, universes and seeing that in almost all of them in some way his presence is seen as like detrimental based on the
Hmm.
way that he behaves. I thought that was
Hmm.
pretty interesting to think about and to actually like see that flashback with the Illuminati of like Strange on the planet after Thanos had been killed, and then choosing to kill him because they thought it was best for the sake of all the
Yeah.
universes was really interesting and thought provoking for sure. Um, we haven't talked much about Cumberbatch in this. I mean, how did
Yeah.
you feel
Yeah.
about his performance?
Yeah. I mean, I've always liked his performances because I feel like he can do what you want from Stephen Strange. In the first film, it's very much like this is kind of like Tony Stark, and
Mhm.
Cumberbatch does that arrogance well, and he obviously is the key figure in this film, as the title would suggest. And I like Cumberbatch, and I think he did good with giving you a few different performances because he's playing a few different versions of Strange. So yeah, I think he did well once again.
Yeah, I thought so too. I think he said in an interview recently that he wants to play this character for the next 10 years. And this is something we had kind of talked about in past movies when he's appeared, whether it was Spider-Man or his own movie. It's just like he seems primed at this point, especially as they're exploring more of the multiverses, to be
Mm,
one of those tent pole heroes who might just be showing up in movies every once in a while as
right.
people are traveling these universes, kind of taking on that new Stark type
Right.
perspective.
And the
So
and the post-credit scene, of course, suggests more to come. And,
yeah,
you know, I think for Benedict Cumberbatch, I think it actually works out because Benedict Cumberbatch works a lot. And he makes a lot of, more independent movies, adult dramas and stuff. And then he just pays all his bills with Doctor Strange. He actually seems to have really figured it out well, where he can balance both the creative and monetary sides of his career pretty well.
yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting to see him in get so much acclaim for Power of the Dog, and then jumping right back into MCU stuff. People are full of multitudes. You mentioned the after credit scene, which I think we can just touch on on quick, where Clea shows up. My understanding is Clea is like usually his like main love interest. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think she
Yeah.
becomes the wife of Doctor Strange, at one point becomes Sorcerer Supreme herself.
And
I mean, for
Charlize
me,
Theron. Whew.
so let's just back it up here. The MCU has introduced three complete A-listers in the last, 7 months. Harry Styles at the end of Eternals, and then in this film, John Krasinski and Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron, the signature female action star in the last 10 years.
Yep.
Fucking dropping bags, man, taking names. I was very impressed. Like, Charlize Theron? Holy shit.
Yeah, when she showed up, I was like, "Wow, that's a sign that they're really investing in this moving forward." So, really, really good stuff. Just real quick, I think one of the things I just wanted to touch on, and it actually doesn't have to be real quick. I think we should go more into it. Is the Illuminati were fucking chumps, bro. I mean, it's a great moment, right? When he goes to Earth, whatever it is, like 163 or whatever the number is
Let me
now.
look
Let
it
me
up.
check.
Yes, Earth,
But
Other Earth. They established a comic thing of named universes and stuff.
yes,
This was Earth 838.
838, and he gets Morto, tricks him and drugs him with the tea. You can
Mhm.
never trust Mordo, it seems. And brings him in front of the council, the Illuminati.
Yep.
And the Illuminati is Professor X and Reed Richards and Mordo and the other people you mentioned
Black
before.
Bolt, Captain Carter, and
Yes, Captain
a
Carter, of course.
a different Captain Marvel played by Rambo.
Yes. And so you got these characters all incredibly powerful, and they just get so easily, dude. What chumps, absolute chumps.
You know, on
Earth
the
eight
other
three eight.
On the
bogus.
other hand, I enjoyed seeing it because there's been a lot of talk throughout the years, like, like when people do like March Madness brackets for Marvel characters, like, well, Wanda's always gonna win. She's the most powerful. And they
Yeah.
actually finally did it. It's like, yeah, you know what? And like Strange said it himself. It's like between the archer and the magical witch,
Yeah.
it's an easy choice. They finally did it. They basically put their dick on the table and be like, you know what? This is like our most powerful person currently
Yep.
alive, and here you go. You get to see it manifested. So I actually didn't mind it. I really like seeing the in the mind scene between
Yeah.
Wanda and Charles Xavier because it's very reminiscent, of course, what we saw with the X-Men films that Patrick Stewart was in, of course, and a good way to have like her fight and defeat
Yeah.
Professor X. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I do think it was. I wish they put up a little bit more of a fight. I mean, literally, like Reed Richards just that's going to be his strategy. He's the smartest guy in the universe. He's going to go up to this person who he knows is super powerful and just be like, "Come on, don't do this. You're better than this." And she
Good
just
point.
turns him into zoodles, dude. Just turns him
Yeah.
into zoodles. It's tough.
So there was a lot of they did some reshoots for this film like they do for every blockbuster. However, there were some like rumors and suggestions that after No Way Home came out or at least started getting test screened and there was like a super warm response to Tobey Maguire and Garfield being in it that they might have amped up the cameo factor for Doctor Strange 2. It's just kind of been suggested, we don't really know. Um I wonder how that might have been done, whether they maybe even added additional characters straight up and redid the fight or added to it. I'm not really sure. It's a great hypothetical. I don't know if we'll ever find that out. But for something that's ultimately super fan servicey, and because this is a multiversal movie, honestly, completely inconsequential, it's still pretty effective as fan service, right? Like I was anticipating it because they released a clip of the Illuminati, which is very famous in the comics, and I was like, oh, I wonder who it'll be at, because T'Challa is a famous member of the Illuminati in the comics. Obviously, we're not going to see that. So I'm like, huh, who's it going to be? And then they had Captain Carter, from What If, Haley Atwell, and a different Captain Marvel, Rambo. They had that also like picked out in like trailers and clips. So I was like, okay, we know about those. But seeing Black Bolt as the Inhumans from the Inhumans, pretty cool way to reintroduce the Inhumans after like the failed series and Agents of Shield and all that. Wow, okay. Krasinski though, as Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, completion of numerous years of fan casting for the character. It actually happened. There it is. And then they actually brought back Stewart again as
Yeah.
Professor X. I was like, wow, they really delivered in this department. And like you said, the fight's pretty brief. Um, Perhaps that's kind of by necessity with the film. You can't really have this complete detour with all these other people that don't really matter. I get it, but for the fan service angle, I thought it was still pretty awesome.
I definitely. I mean, it got a huge response in my theater. People were very excited when this scene came on. I think Reed Richards was obviously the
Yeah.
number one, but then when Patrick Stewart came out, people were like, "Oh shit! Like he's back," and that was big. And I mean, it does open up everything that we kind of expected to be happening. We already knew the Fantastic Four movie was going to be happening. Actually, I think John Watts just left that.
He did.
Um,
Yep.
so again, Fantastic Four movie potentially having some problems early on. We'll see. But then the idea of how they're gonna kind of bring the X-Men in here makes sense, and it feels a little bit. I'm not super familiar with the storyline in the comics, but the Secret Wars or what I'm reading are seem
Mhm.
to be being set up here. The idea of like a Watcher who like puts these people
Right.
together. We'll see.
Yeah, it seems like if they're gonna introduce Fantastic Four is gonna have their own film. That's one thing,
Yeah,
but like X-Men and like Inhumans as well. It's like we're probably just gonna skip a lot of steps by one of these like big event series being
yeah,
put onto film to kind of like speed things up basically and bring all these new characters to the fore. So TBD there. We're honestly kind of due for a announcement from Marvel just because we only actually have titled movies dated through the end of 2023 next year. Usually we know a little bit further in advance. as the phases go. Blade, for example, we don't even have a date
Blade.
for that. And anything post that film, we don't know. So I wouldn't be shocked if sometime this year Disney and Marvel do their own event and kind of lay out their plans a little bit.
Yeah, Feige in an interview just recently said that they um, have mapped out the next 10 years of
Mhm.
superhero movies. So MCU not planning to slow down anytime soon.
Yeah.
Um, were you excited to see Reed Richards on screen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to the film just because Fantastic Four at one point were a very popular comic. And honestly, for the time, I did enjoy the two Fantastic Four movies we did get. Obviously, they're very dated, and the second one's not too good, but I liked them, and I want to see that done right. And I actually kind of just like chuckled to myself. I was like, wow, they actually got Krasinski for it. They really did it. Wow, that's kind of monumental. And then, oh yeah, they drop a bomb at the end of the movie. Oh yeah, Charlize Theron's in the MCU now too. Like I said, like crazy shit, honestly. Um, so yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Fantastic Four down the line. Um, one thing, honestly, after watching the movie, I was kind of surprised is we don't actually see Chiwetel Ejiofor's Mordo in the current like universe we know. We don't actually see the Mordo we know. We only see the other Earth, other universe Mordo. I thought that was kind of interesting, just because the end of Doctor Strange 1 is leaving you with Mordo's broke bad and it's a bad guy now, and
Yeah,
we don't know anything about what that guy's up to,
yeah,
honestly.
he's kind of out there. We'll
Yeah.
we'll see him eventually, I'm sure. Um, Yeah, I think overall I left this movie feeling satisfied. But just as someone that hasn't seen everywhere, everything all the time, and you being
Close.
someone that
Everything
has
everywhere all at once.
all at once, oh man, I'm never gonna get that. What was your response in just seeing another movie that has gotten so much acclaim for their portrayal of the multiverse and how inventive that was?
Yeah, well, I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once is a better film than No Way Home. It's a better film than Doctor Strange too, significantly better. So I would encourage anyone who likes these kind of stories that got super mainstreamed by Into the Spider Verse, seek out Everything Everywhere All at Once because that is an amazing original film. And by comparison, Doctor Strange 2 is not that multiversal. Like we said, we don't really spend time anywhere except two places, which is not the case in Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I'll be interested to see how multiverse heavy future MCU stuff is, because I do still believe that it kind of eliminates a lot of your stakes when you're doing things in a universe that you don't care about and it doesn't really matter. Like
Yeah,
that's why they could do the Illuminati cameo, because they can just wipe their hands clean of it and never reference any of those people again if they so choose, and it would
yeah.
make sense to the fans. So I think handling your stakes is a challenge when you're juggling universes like this. Everything Everywhere All at Once really nails it. Spider-Man No Way Home obviously did the fan service angle of it, does it well too. This movie, I think that it's perhaps one of the weaker elements of Doctor Strange 2, but it doesn't hamper the movie at the end of the day.
I did think it was a cool scene when they were flying through the different multiverses and
Yeah,
like the bodies were changing into different things, like from
right.
drawings to paint to different forms. I thought that was pretty fun.
This is not a good compliment, but it reminded me of the hyperspace jumping sequence in Rise of Skywalker, where they're on like 10
Mm,
planets in a row.
yeah, that's interesting. That's a good call. Yeah, I think they're trying to set up the stakes. If too much happens within these universes, then they kind of crash into each other and they're all destroyed. But I think we actually have to see like what that might look like,
Mm,
before we can actually like care about those stakes at all. Like it hasn't happened yet. We haven't actually seen these universes collide. So we'll
right.
see.
One last note, just want to shout out Benedict Wong as Wong.
Yeah.
Haven't talked about him yet. He's really awesome in this role. Benedict Wong has awesome comedic timing. We've seen that in other stuff like What We Do in the Shadows. Obviously, it's a small supporting role at the end of the day, but I think he's a really funny guy.
I actually we didn't talk about much at the Kamertai, but I mean I thought that was like a okay scene. I mean
The fight
it
with all
yeah, the
the
fight.
sorcerers, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was cool to see all the sorcerers like fighting together. Although again, Wanda's just too powerful, man. And like the fact that she doesn't just like get this kid immediately is just like crazy. Like it doesn't make
Right.
any sense when you look
Hey,
at
I
how
mean, she
powerful
is
she is.
fighting sorcerers. It's not like she's fighting a bunch of people. But yeah, throughout the movie, Wanda waxes everyone. They
Yeah.
didn't hold anything back. It was good.